Governments don't admit things like this. They deny, they delay, they deflect. That's the playbook. That's always been the playbook. So when a government does the opposite, when it opens its files, invites civilian researchers in, releases radar data, and stands before the media and says, "Something was in our skies, we chased it, we cannot explain what it was," you pay attention. Belgium, 1989 to 1990. 13,500 people reported seeing the same thing. Police officers, military personnel, air traffic controllers, scientists, engineers, ordinary families standing in their backyards, all describing the same craft. Silent, triangular, enormous, moving at speeds that shouldn't be physically possible. The Belgian Air Force scrambled 2 F-16 fighter jets to intercept it. Their radar locked on 9 times. Each time, the object executed a maneuver that no aircraft on Earth in 1990 could perform, dropping from 9,000 feet to 500 feet in seconds, accelerating from 150 miles per hour to over 1,000 miles per hour, instantly, with no sonic boom. The Belgian Air Force's own conclusion? The nature and origin of the phenomenon remain unknown. Not a weather balloon, not a misidentified aircraft, not mass hysteria. Unknown. Officially, on the record, from the military. This is the Belgian UFO wave, and it is one of the most documented, most officially investigated, most credible UFO events in modern history. Let's go through it properly. November 29th, 1989, Eupen, Belgium, 5:15 p.m. It doesn't start with a blurry photograph. It doesn't start with a lone witness in the middle of nowhere. It starts with 2 police officers doing a routine patrol on the road between Eupen and Kelmis. Gendarmes Heinrich Nicole and Hubert von Montigny. Trained observers, armed, on duty. Not the kind of people who imagine things in the sky. At 5:15 in the afternoon, before dark, they see something hovering above a field to the left of the road. A massive triangular platform. 3 powerful white lights, one at each corner. A pulsing red light in the center. And underneath, something resembling a sphere or dome rotating slowly. The whole thing hovering at rooftop level, in complete silence. Nicole later said, and I want you to hear this from a police officer, he said, "It was larger than a football field. It was absolutely silent, and it seemed to know we were there." The 2 officers watch it for over an hour. They follow it in their patrol car as it moves slowly toward the town of Eupen. They radio in. Other units are dispatched. By nightfall, 14 Belgian gendarmes have independently observed the same object. 14 police officers on the first night. And then it moves toward the reservoir at Jalep, hovers above the water for several minutes, as if examining it, then rises slowly and disappears into the dark. That was November 29th. Over the next 5 months, the sightings don't stop. They multiply. The wave begins. December 1989, January 1990, February 1990, March 1990. Reports pouring in from across Belgium. Liège, Brussels, Namur, Brabant, Antwerp. Not just one region, the entire southern part of the country. And the descriptions are consistent in a way that makes investigators take notice. Not consistent because people were copying each other. Consistent because they were seeing the same thing. Large, triangular, dark, silent. 3 white lights at the corners, a red pulsing central light, moving slowly, sometimes as slow as 25 miles per hour, at treetop level.
Look at that.
Then suddenly accelerating to extraordinary speed, without any sound, without any engine signature, without any heat trail. The Belgian government does something remarkable at this point. Rather than classify the reports and deny everything, they do the opposite. The Belgian Air Force sets up a special task force led by Chief of Operations Colonel Wilfried de Brouwer, and they invite SOBEPS, the Belgian Society for the Study of Space Phenomena, a civilian research group, to investigate alongside them. A government, working with civilian UFO researchers, publicly, sharing data. That had never happened before, and it has almost never happened since. March 30th, 1990, 11 p.m. If the Belgian wave was a story building toward something, March 30th, 1990 was the climax. At 11 p.m., the Control Reporting Center at Glans, a NATO radar installation east of Brussels, receives reports. Unusual lights seen moving toward Torbay-Jean-Bleu, southeast of Brussels. The CRC requests the Wavre Gendarmerie send a patrol to confirm. The patrol confirms something is there. At 11:05 p.m., the Traffic Control Center at Semmerzak picks up an unidentified return on radar. The object is where the witnesses say it is. Ground radar and human eyes correlating. At 11:05 p.m., the order is given. Scramble 2 F-16 fighters from Beauchamp Air Base. The 2 F-16 fighters, each equipped with advanced pulse Doppler radar, climb into Belgian airspace and head for the target. What happens next is documented in an official Belgian Air Force chronological report, a document the public can read today. The chase. Over the next hour, the 2 F-16s attempt 9 separate radar lock-ons. 9 times their instruments lock onto the target, and 9 times the target responds. Not by running, not by simply outrunning the jets, by doing something the jets cannot follow. On one radar lock, the object drops from 9,000 feet to 500 feet in under a second. For context, that's a descent of more than 8,000 feet in less than 1 second. Any human pilot would be dead. The G-forces alone would be fatal. Any known aircraft structure would break apart. On another lock, the object accelerates from 150 miles per hour to over 1,000 miles per hour in seconds, without producing a sonic boom. When an aircraft breaks the sound barrier, you hear it. Everyone for miles hears it. The witnesses on the ground that night heard nothing. The pilots themselves? They never visually saw the object, only on instruments. Each time they locked on, it vanished, appeared elsewhere, moved in ways their radar was not designed to track. After midnight, radar contact becomes sporadic. The last confirmed lock occurs at 0:40. At 1 o'clock, the F-16s return to base, without an identification, without an explanation. The Wavre Gendarmerie officers who had been watching from the ground describe what they saw. 4 lights now arranged in a square formation, making short, jerky movements, then, one by one, losing their luminosity and disappearing in 4 separate directions. At around 1:30 a.m., the Belgian Air Force compiled everything. Every radar return, every pilot report, every gendarme testimony, every ground observation. Colonel Brouwer later said in an official press conference, "The Belgian Air Force has found no explanation for the reports. We cannot say what it was. We can say what it was not. It was not any aircraft we know of." Here's what makes the Belgian wave different from almost every other UFO case. The witnesses. Not just the number of them, 13,500 reported sightings over 5 months, but who they were. Police officers who filed official reports and signed their names. Military personnel who were risking their careers to describe what they saw. Air traffic controllers with decades of experience identifying aircraft. Scientists, engineers, professors. A NATO radar operator who tracked the object on his screen and called it, in his words, unlike anything in our database. SOBEPs collected over 2,600 written, signed statements. They interviewed witnesses who had never spoken to media, who weren't looking for attention. A retired school teacher in Namur who saw it pass over her garden at treetop level. She described being able to see the structure of it. Panels, geometry, a defined edge. Not a light, a craft. She said it moved so slowly she could have walked alongside it, and that the silence was the strangest part. Something that size, at that altitude, should have been deafening. A family in Liège, a mother, father, and their teenage son, watched it hover above their neighborhood for 11 minutes. They describe it as blocking out stars. As being so large, it filled their entire field of view when they looked up. And then it rotated, slowly, and moved away toward the south, without accelerating, without making a sound, just gone. Investigators found the witness pool unusual in one specific way. Most UFO sightings produce descriptions that vary significantly. Different shapes, different colors, different behavior. The Belgian wave witnesses described the same object, almost every time. Triangular, dark, 3 white lights, 1 red central pulse. Silent, low, slow, then suddenly fast. Sobe investigators said the consistency was, in their assessment, beyond what mass suggestion could produce, because many witnesses had reported before media coverage began, before they could have been influenced by what others were saying. The Petit-Rechain photo. In April 1990, at the height of the wave, a photograph appeared. A dark triangular object, 3 bright lights at the corners, taken by an anonymous photographer near the town of Petit-Rechain. It went global. Newspapers, magazines, television. For 20 years, it was the visual centerpiece of the Belgian UFO wave. On July 26, 2011, a man named Patrick Maréchal went on Belgian television and explained that he had made it. He cut a piece of styrofoam into a triangle, painted it black, embedded a flashlight at each corner, suspended it from a string, and photographed it in the dark. The most famous photograph from the Belgian UFO wave was a hoax. Let that sit for a moment. Don't rush past it. And here's where I want to be clear with you, because some channels would bury this, or explain it away, or pretend it doesn't matter. It matters. The hoax photo is a problem for this case. Not because it disproves anything, it doesn't, but because it poisons the evidence pool. It makes everything harder to evaluate. What the skeptics say, fairly. Brian Dunning, a science communicator who investigated this case specifically, pointed out several things. The F-16 radar lock-ons. The Belgian military itself noted that all 3 confirmed locks were the F-16s locking onto each other. The other contacts were attributed to a well-documented atmospheric interference called Bragg scattering. The 143 ground witnesses who reported seeing the object on the night of March 30th, all 143 of those reports came in after the event, after it was publicized, not during. And the civilian investigation group, Sobeys, was not a neutral body. It was a UFO advocacy organization, one that actively solicited reports and had a pre-existing belief in extraterrestrial visits. These are legitimate criticisms. They deserve to be acknowledged. But here's what the skeptics can't explain. The first 14 gendarmes on November 29th, they filed official police reports before anyone was talking about UFOs, before any media coverage, before any mass suggestion. The NATO radar at Glans on March 30th, that contact was real, cross-confirmed by multiple stations. Colonel Brouwer, the Air Force Chief of Operations, said something that has never been retracted. Something was there. What it was, we do not know. The Minister of Defense at the time, Leo Delcroix, wrote this in an official letter. No explanation has been found to date. The nature and origin of the phenomenon remain unknown. U.S. authorities confirmed to the Belgian government no American aircraft, including classified stealth programs, were operating in Belgian airspace during this period. The U.S. Embassy confirmed it. The Defense Intelligence Agency confirmed it. So the hoax photo is real. The skeptical criticisms of the radar data are legitimate. And something still happened over Belgium that nobody has explained. Both things are true. Theory 1. Classified military technology. The timing is suspicious. The
Secured.
Lockheed
Hydraulic system
F-117
check complete.
Nighthawk,
Copy that.
America's first operational stealth
All green,
aircraft,
Nighthawk 2-1 is
had been
ready.
flying since 1983. But it wasn't publicly acknowledged until 1988. The Northrop B-2 Spirit, the flying wing stealth bomber, made its first flight on July 17, 1989, 5 months before the Belgian wave began. Belgian airspace sits close to U.S. air bases in Germany and the Netherlands. It would have been, theoretically, an ideal place to test electronic countermeasures against NATO detection systems. The shape matches. Angular, dark, low radar cross-section. But here's the problem. The Belgian government asked the United States directly. The U.S. Embassy replied in writing, "No American aircraft were conducting operations in Belgian airspace." The Belgian Ministry of Defense accepted that denial. And the flight characteristics described, hovering at 25 miles per hour, silent, dropping 8,000 feet in a second. No stealth aircraft of that era or any era could do those things.
Theory 2. Atmospheric and psychological phenomena. Mass suggestion is real. It has been documented. Under certain atmospheric conditions, lights from the ground can reflect off low cloud cover in ways that create the impression of structured objects. And once people know to look, they look, and they find things. This theory covers the late reported witnesses, the ones who saw the news and then remembered what they saw. It partially covers the radar anomalies. Bragg scattering is a real phenomenon. But it doesn't cover the 14 police officers on night 1. It doesn't cover the NATO radar confirmation on March 30th. It doesn't explain Colonel Brouwer. And it doesn't explain how 13,000 separate people across 5 months all described the same geometry. Theory 3. Something we don't have a name for. There is a third possibility that gets less airtime. Not necessarily alien, not necessarily human, but something operating in Belgian airspace in 1989 and 1990 that was technologically beyond what any nation publicly acknowledges. Something that could hover silently, move at walking pace, and then disappear at supersonic speed. Interact with radar in ways that suggested awareness, responding to lock-ons by executing evasive maneuvers, and leave no physical trace. No debris, no crash, no evidence beyond the sightings themselves. The Belgian Air Force concluded their investigation with a phrase that has stayed in the UFO literature for 30 years. The phenomenon is real. Its origin is unknown. Not confirmed alien, not confirmed human, just real and unknown, which is more honest than most governments have ever been about anything in this space. The Belgian UFO wave ended, officially, in April 1990. SOBEPS continued collecting reports for years after. But the concentrated wave, the 5 months of nightly sightings, stopped as suddenly as it began. Colonel Wilfried de Brouwer retired from the Belgian Air Force as a major general. He has spoken about the case publicly many times in his retirement. He has never changed his position. He says, to this day, that something was there. Something that could outmaneuver his best aircraft. Something that he cannot explain. He said in one interview, "I want you to hear this from a man who spent his career in military aviation. What impressed me most were the witnesses, some of whom I know personally. Credible people who told me clearly what they saw. Something was going on." 13,500 witnesses, 14 police officers on the first night, 2 F-16s that couldn't catch it, a government that told the truth about what it didn't know, and a photo that turned out to be styrofoam. That last part matters, because this case teaches you something important about how to think about this subject. The easy version of this story is, everything is real, everything is alien,
all the evidence points one way. The honest version is more complicated. Some evidence holds up, some doesn't. Some questions have answers, most don't. But here's what stays with you when you go through this case properly. 14 experienced police officers filed official reports on November 29, 1989. Before anyone was looking. Before media coverage. Before mass suggestion. They described the same thing, in detail, with their names attached. And whatever they saw that night, above the fields of eastern Belgium, the Belgian government investigated it for 5 months. Scrambled jets to chase it, shared their data publicly, and concluded they had no explanation. That's not a cover-up. That's an admission. And admissions like that, from governments, are rare enough to pay attention to. If this case is new to you, I'd recommend reading the official Belgian Air Force report. It's public, it's detailed, and it's one of the most honest documents any government has ever produced about this subject. Subscribe if you want to keep going through cases like this. Drop a comment. What do you think was over Belgium? And I'll see you in the next one.